If you were to ask any of your favorite guitar players, what does your usual playing session look like? They would all tell you something along the lines of, well, I start with this exercise because it helps me with A, B, and C. And then I move on to this exercise because it helps me with, D, E, F. And, I go over to this exercise and that helps me with X, Y, and Z, et cetera, all throughout the alphabet. But what's so interesting is that guitar players who might not have the same amount of time as a professional, they might not have hours and hours and hours a day to refine their skills. What they end up doing is skipping over the skill building, even though they want to get better and better, they skip over it and then they move on to the songs and solos they want to learn. Instead of recognizing, oh, that's such a good idea to practice a few things on the front end of my session and then move on to all the other stuff I'm currently working on. Right? So that's what we're going to do today is I'm going to be taking you through a 15-minute practice session, and I'll be doing this every freaking Monday. Because if you are one of those people who doesn't have hours and hours a day to devote to guitar and refining your skills, you need to change up the skills from week to week. So we're going to work on something really specific this week. That's why I'm putting this out on Monday. And then next Monday, we'll work on a new set of skills. So you can basically have a practice session, a warm-up session that you can put on the front end of your guitar time, and then you can move into all the songs and solos you want to learn, and you'll be feeling that much better about your playing, and you don't have to worry about all the freaking blemishes that happen when you race into a song and you miss notes and you get frustrated. Oh shoot, I gotta go back. You'll be able to be in a better place with your playing by the time you move into all the things you're working on at the moment. All right, so if you find this helpful, that's kind of my plug to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to see something new every freaking Monday that actually helps you, refine your skills. So last week's, exercises are going to be different than this week's exercises. They're focused on different things, and so you'll be well-rounded if you stick with this. All right. So this first exercise is going to be focused on picking accuracy. Now it's just 5 minutes, but if you do need to adjust your timer, that's totally fine. 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes, whatever you need. Something is better than nothing. But like I said, it's going to be picking accuracy, and we're going to get kind of cooler and cooler sounding as the exercises go along, but this isn't going to be the sexiest sounding exercise. However, the skills inside of it will get you better at hitting your solos more accurately, more proficiently, more competently, right? So even though the exercise won't sound cool, think about like Stevie Ray Vaughan licks where he's string skipping, sliding. So even though we're not doing that in this exact exercise, the skill of skipping strings, being accurate with your picking is really important so that you don't have to always look at your hands. You can just do that in your practice pieces, and then you can, be a little bit more fluid when you move on to your songs and solos. So just want to give you some context on how this will benefit you. But we're basically going to be using these really simple bar chord shapes, G, A minor, C, and D. And that's going to be kind of our framework. But what we're going to do is we're going to individually pick notes. We're always going to come back to the low E string. So that's the G, section. Then we'll move up. Same idea for the A minor. Then we'll move to the C shape. A little different because we're going to come back down. Now, if you're asking yourself, oh, well, should you go through that faster? No, in fact, I probably should have gone slower, played it even lighter, been a little bit softer. I want to make sure you all hear this, but we really want to make sure we're consistent with our picking. We can really feel things out. We're just, again, trying to turn on the brain, turn on the hands, connect the two. So if you rush through it, you're going to be missing notes. Oh shoot, I got to restart. We don't want that when we're warming up. We don't want that ever, right? But you definitely don't want to reinforce bad habits when you're in your dedicated practice time. Right? You can even hear it on the first few times I went through it, or just the first time I went through it. You could hear me pressing down before I actually pick. That's a little blemish that I want to clear up as I go through this routine. Now, what I think you should do on this is use a metronome. I'm always going to promote a metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Something that keeps you honest. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so on and so forth. But again, something that keeps you honest, something that keeps you consistent, something that keeps you on track, because what can end up happening is, you feel good with that, and then you start racing through it, and all of a sudden the skills diminish instead of staying consistent and growing, all right? But that's the first exercise. Accuracy, skipping strings, boom, done, we move on from there. The second exercise, and what I should say is, you can always come back to this to look at the tabs. I will put PDFs in the description. Sorry, brain fart. I will put PDFs in the description of each exercise so you can, again, look at this on your own time. You don't have to come back to the video. And sorry for not doing that on the previous one. I only just discovered that I can put a really simple Google Drive, PDF, and you can download it and have it for yourself. All right, but there's exercise 1. Exercise 2, we're going to be working on strumming, and I'll show it to you first. We'll break it down because it might be a little funky for some of you, and loosening up, getting some triplet work. For those of you who aren't familiar, we're going to be using triplets. So just 2 chords, relatively simple stuff. However, if you're newer to these shapes, you're newer to these positions, go ahead and take the 5 minutes to just feel them out. Right? Transition between the 2. Do they sound clean? Do they sound good? Yada, 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 et cetera, right? You can take 5 minutes to do that, and it'll be really valuable if that's where you're at with your guitar playing. For those of you who are ready for the strumming and want to take a crack at it, as always, use a metronome that feels comfortable for you. If you don't feel comfortable going with the metronome yet, that's also okay. But if you're feeling comfortable being somewhat fluid, I would then go to a metronome where you can work through this in a good rhythm, all right? I'm sure even some of you are thinking, well, that rhythm didn't sound great. My preference is to use a metronome. I don't have one right next to me, so I was strumming without one. My apologies. But we have this A minor. So we're starting with a downstroke and then another downstroke. You can go with an individual note like I was doing, right? 2 downstrokes, or you can go with a full, up to you. The 2 downstrokes, that's the triplet. Up, down, up. Up, down, up. Triplet, triplet. All right, then we just basically have down, 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 up. And the 3rd down is muted. Right? Down, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up. And it's the same thing here. Might take you a second to run through it, but there it is, all right? And like I said, because it's a week, first day might just be kind of messing around with it, getting comfortable. second day, all of a sudden, oh, you know what, actually I can play that with a metronome. Third day, you know the metronome BPM that you want to play with, so that feels pretty good. Fourth day, maybe you pick it up, so you can progress throughout that whole week and, get pretty decent at these things. The third exercise is going to be a fun lick. So in my mind, we go from more boring to more fun. And the third exercise is going to be a lick. We're going to be doing some muted strings, so a strong, strum down into a rake. We got some pulling, some, bending, and I believe some pulling and hammer-ons. But let's jump into it, and you'll hear it, you'll see it. I'll have the tabs, of course. So there's the lick. Sounds pretty simple, but there are some interesting things going on under the hood, and we'll break those down right freaking now. And so basically on that first bend, we're having this soft, bar, right? If we were going, if we were really pressing down, you would hear those strings. It's a soft bar so that they're muted, and as you stroke through these muted strings, especially the D string, you're going to have this more full sounding bend. It's just going to have a little more like stank on it. That's all I can say. You'll hear Stevie Ray Vaughan do this a lot. But we're basically having a soft bar, and you might over time realize that you don't actually have to keep your hand here. It'll kind of fall into place, but play around with that. Of course, that's part of skill building, is messing around with like what actually feels right. But you are hitting that D string for sure as you push into the G, and that's where we're bending, right? Now, what we're doing on the way back, back down, is we're raking up. So we're muting again the high E and the B string as we go towards the G. Excuse me. We're hitting the G on that way up, and then we're hitting, the D string, right? So it's up and then down. Those are really the intricate, maybe, pieces that are inside of this lick. And then it's... But what I would do is, refine the skills first and save, the metronome playing it in rhythm, until the last few days. Now you can hit a backing track. If you go to like a G blues backing track, you can refine this lick on top of something so that not only you're not only in good rhythm, you're doing it in good rhythm on top of chords, which will, really help it sink into your system as far as being something you can come back to in your playing. There it is, right? And it doesn't just need to be a G blues. Of course, it sounds great on a G blues. Anyways, you get the idea. I don't need to keep noodling. All right, so there it is. I'm gonna cut out all of my other ranting and rambling about that final lick, put it over a G blues, and it'll sound really good. You can refine it in that context. And yeah, hit each one of these. 5 minutes each, I think, would be best. But if you need to shorten that, that's totally fine. Like and subscribe if you found these helpful. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.